and welcome to our flip video lesson, A Wise Teacher, lesson 6.01. We're starting a new unit, and our lesson 6.01 details are Human Odyssey reading pages 149 to 163. I will be reading some of those pages during this flip video. Student Guide Workbook pages 161 to 165. OMS assignment, your assessment 6.01, and then about the topic, Confucius and his influence on Chinese society. Lesson learning objectives. Describe the Confucian notion of an enlightened ruler. Explain the state of political unrest in China during the time that Confucius lived and taught. Explain why Confucius thought the family provided a good model for Chinese society. And identify the most influential philosopher in Chinese history. Lesson introductions. A wise teacher. How much difference can one person make? Confucius's life provided a dramatic example. When Confucius began to teach, China was in trouble. Peace and unity had given way to warring among small provinces. Government was corrupt. The rich lived in great houses, while the poor lacked even the basics of life, like food. Confucius was honest, fair, and loved learning. Confucius gave China a philosophy that eventually transformed society. So now you're going to go ahead and turn to your student guide, page 163. And this is just a quick overview of this lesson. It follows right along with your reading guide, so you can go ahead and fill in these answers as I read them. If you need extra time, you can always pause this video. The Shang dynasty was China's first dynasty. It ruled for more than 600 years. The united rulers, the early Chinese people. Under this dynasty, Chinese civilization flourished and spread. The Zhou dynasty came to power around 1050 BC. China disintegrated into a collection of warring states. Rich lords kept their own armies. Rulers cared little about the common people. And then comes along Confucius, the great teacher. Confucius was born around 551 BC, and at a very early age he decided he wanted to become a scholar. He studied ancient writings. He absorbed China's history. He traveled from state to state. Confucius became a good and wise teacher. He welcomed all students. He did not like lazy pupils. And he passed on important ideas to others. The secret to a peaceful land and good life was a good character. To live well, a person must be a gentleman. And right behavior led to a good life. And in your own words, describe Confucius's idea of an enlightened ruler. So these are just some bulleted points. You can go ahead and pause this video and you can write your own in there if you would like, or you can use these bulleted points just to get a good idea of what he was like. So he acted with virtue. He set good examples for his subjects to follow. He worked hard to bring good government to the people. He reformed himself and he lived up to high standards. So he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk, if we're going to use current day language. In search of an enlightened ruler, Confucius wanted to do something about the warfare and injustice. He wanted to bring back the days of the early Zhou kings. Those rulers acted with virtue. The common people treated each other like family. To try out his reforms, Confucius wanted to take a role in government. From time to time, he took jobs in the government. He became an excellent police commissioner. He was too honest for most rulers. He urged rulers to work hard to bring good government to the people. He told rulers to reform themselves if they wanted their kingdom to change. Corrupt officials feared Confucius's ideas of virtuous leadership, and nobles and lords ignored Confucius's advice. And then the right opportunity to play an important role in government never came along. So Confucius spent most of his life as a teacher. He wanted his students to learn how to live good lives. Confucius wanted them to learn the right ways to think and act. He taught as many students as possible so that one day some of his students might become leaders. He taught his students to be the kind of people he wanted to govern China. The family and good government. Confucius used the family as a model for good government. From the early years of Chinese civilization, families worshiped their ancestors. Young people respected older relatives. Confucius placed great importance on family obligations. He said that within the family, people learn respect, cooperation, and good habits. He urged young people to obey and honor their elders. He taught that older generations should give young people guidance and love. Confucius viewed good conduct as being more important in society than laws. He believed that concern for others was the key to good government. He thought good conduct inspired others to be good, and he said society would grow more harmonious when people treated others fairly and with respect. So why did Confucius think the family was a good role model for Chinese society? In Chinese families, people learned respect, cooperation, and good habits that helped them deal fairly with others. Confucius believed that if everyone treated each other fairly and with respect, society would be more harmonious. And then if you turn to your student guide, page 161, I'm going to go ahead and read The Papermaker's Son on page 151 in the Human Odyssey book. Okay, and so I want you to think about, you can read this slide while I'm going through this, think about these values that were learned in Chinese society. The Papermaker's Son, this is on page 151. Sweat trickled down Ren Li's forehead. His eyes stung. Impatiently, he rubbed them against his shoulder, careful not to loosen his grip on the long stirring rod. The great vat of boiling hemp fibers bubbled and steamed. Later, he would help his father dip the bamboo screens into the mushy pulp. Then they would press the water out and leave the screens to dry. After that came Li's favorite part, peeling off the clean new paper and rolling it into a neat scroll. Li imagined a long-bearded scholar holding a freshly inked brush over his paper. What important knowledge would the man record? History? Medicine? Mathematics? Swiftly, the brush came down, making a bold, dark stroke. Li! Ren Zhu leaned against the doorway of the shop, arms crossed. How long had he been standing there? Father, stammered Li. I was just... The papermaker shook his head. My son, the dreamer. But the look in his eyes was less stern than his voice. I have been dreaming too, he said, about a bowl of vegetables and millet. Do you think my dream will come true? The noon meal, Li nodded eagerly. These days he seemed to always be hungry. A few minutes later, he was dashing through the city streets, basket slung over a bamboo pole resting on his thin shoulder. As he approached the market, the streets grew narrower and more crowded. Tempting aromas teased his nose, roasted meat, noodles with bean curd, the sweet smell of steamed buns. The gray-haired market vendor filled his bowl with millet, topped with a few vegetables for flavor. Li thanked her with a polite bow. He knew he should run straight home with the hot food, but his duties at the shop did not allow him to explore the city every day. Surely, staying out just a bit longer wouldn't hurt. His feet carried him away from the market, towards the broader streets and fine big houses surrounding the palace walls, finally stopping just outside a familiar open window. Through the window, Li could see the glossy black heads bent over their work. Were they studying the classics of the sage Confucius? He was China's wisest man. He had lived hundreds of years ago. Of course, like anyone, Li knew many of his sayings by heart. But oh, to read the great words for himself. Suddenly he heard a clattering, and a sharp, high-pitched cry rang out. Li flattened himself against the wall. Teacher, I dropped my ink stone, said in an apologetic voice. A calligraphy lesson, Li peeked through the window again. At the front of the room stood a tall old man with a long beard, the very image of the scholar Li had seen in his daydreams, as he stirred the boiling vat. The man wore a blue silk robe, the luxurious material a sigh of his high rank. Li tugged at the hem of his own rough hemp tunic. The man moved among his students, stopping to look over the shoulder of a chubby boy holding a costly lacquered brush. The boy smiled, but his teacher frowned. Sloppy, he said. Such careless work will not impress the officials selecting men to serve in government. You must be more diligent in your studies. How can you rule others when you have not learned to rule yourself? He took the boy's brush and dipped it into the black ink. A few quick strokes across the paper and a graceful character appeared. Diligence, said the teacher. Now you try. The boy bowed his head. Li set down his basket. With his bamboo pole, he traced the character into the dirt. Diligence. He copied it a second time, and then a third. Absorbed, he did not notice the teacher moving towards the open window. Too late, he glanced up to find the teacher gazing down at him. Their eyes met. For an instant, Li stood frozen. Then he snatched up his basket and ran. Stupid, stupid, stupid. How could he have been so foolish? Never again would Li go near that school. Panting, he rounded the final corner and stumbled into the shop. As his eyes adjusted to the dark inside, he saw the papermaker bent over his screens. Lee took the lunch bowl from the basket and handed it to his father. "Please let it still be warm," he prayed. But the look on Renzu's face, he knew his prayer had not been answered. "The food is cold, and I have had to work alone," his father sounded angry. "Where have you been?" 1,000 excuses swirled through Lee's mind, but his tongue refused to shape the words. Bad enough that he had been a disobedient and thoughtless son. At least he would not be so disrespectful as to tell lies. "I was listening outside the school," he admitted. His father looked at him. When he spoke at last, his voice was gentle. "Lee," he said, "you know we are not rich. If I could send you to the school, I would. Nothing would make me happier than to see you spend your days in study." Lee nodded, blinking back the tears. Renzu went on. "Being an honest craftsman is no shame. Without our paper, how would knowledge be preserved? It is my duty to make the finest paper possible and to teach my son our craft. And it is your duty to work hard and to learn." Together they ate their lunch in silence. Every now and then, Lee sneaked a glance at his father. He did not look angry anymore. He looked sad and worried. Lee thought of a famous story about Confucius. A young man once asked the sage what it meant to be a good son. Confucius replied, "Let your parents only worry that you may fall sick." "I will be a better son," Lee silently vowed. "Never again will my father have to worry about me." In the days that followed, he worked harder than ever. Without being asked, he swept the shop and dusted the rolls of pale yellow paper. He returned from errands so quickly his father did not even realize he had left. He did not even daydream anymore. Late one afternoon, Lee working alone when he heard the shop door open. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a flash of blue silk. It was the teacher. How had he found Lee? Was he angry that Lee had eavesdropped during the lesson? But the man looked just as surprised to see Lee. He stared at him a moment, then he spoke. "Ah, yes, I remember." The young scholar, scratching like a chicken in the dirt. Lee blushed, but said nothing. "Why do you stand outside the window of my school?" the teacher pressed on. "Do you hope to learn enough to become an official? To become something better than a paper maker?" The words burst from Lee's mouth. "My father is a paper maker, and there is no one better in the world than my father." From the back of the shop, Renzu emerged. "What is this shouting?" When he saw the teacher in his long beard and silk robe, he turned pale. "Lee, have you gone mad? An honored guest? A scholar? An elder?" He bowed deeply. "Please forgive my disrespectful son." Lee's heart overflowed with shame. He bowed too, grateful for this opportunity to hide his face. At first, he did not even recognize the sound. It was so unexpected. The teacher was laughing. "Papermaker," he said, "do not scold the boy. Courtesy is a great treasure, but even greater is loyalty. A son loyal to his father will become a subject loyal to his ruler." Renzu stammered. "An ignorant boy, if you will please forgive." "Ignorance can be cured," the teacher said. "My school is full of boys with the same disease, who care far less for their medicine." Renzu bowed again. "You do us too much honor. It is true, Lee has a great desire to learn, but he lacks the wisdom to accept his station in life. An education in the classics is impossible for such as us." The teacher stroked his beard. "Did not Confucius say a gentleman is known by his behavior rather than his family?" He was silent for a moment. "I would like to find out what this boy can learn." Lee's heart rose. Was this old man offering to teach him? "I cannot pay," said Lee's father. "There is no need, and we do not deserve such generosity." The teacher did not reply. He gazed around the small, dark shop. "Generosity," he said. "My school needs two materials, clean paper and willing students. Give me some of both, and you will be the generous one." Lee held his breath. At last his father nodded. "Excellent." The teacher turned to Lee. "My servant waits outside. Bring him many scrolls of paper and help him carry them to the school." Lee rushed to do his bidding. "And hurry back. Young chicken scratching scholar, you are needed in the shop. Remember, you are still your father's son." And so if we think about that reading, think about Chinese society valued learning and education, and that was shown by Ren Lee's stop to listen in on the calligraphy lesson. Chinese society valued honesty. Instead of making an excuse, Ren Lee told, it actually should be his father. There was some, on the study guide, sometimes it has Ren Lee as a boy and sometimes as a girl, but told his father the truth when he returned to shop with the cold food. Question 3, the Chinese valued hard work and thought children should do what was expected of them. Ren Lee worked harder than ever. He even did things without being asked. And then the Chinese thought children should honor their parents. Renli stood up for his father when the scholar asked if Renli wanted to become something better than a papermaker. So again, please excuse this typo here. That should be he. Okay? All right, next one. And that was on page 161 in your study guide if you'd like to fill that in. So here we come to our reading section. Make sure that you do have pages 149 to 163 read. As I said, I did read, let's see, that was pages 151 all the way up until 155. So you can skip through that section when you do your reading because I've already done that part for you. Important vocabulary words to understand. A dynasty is a family of rulers who rule over a country for a long period of time. Enlighten means having or showing a good understanding of how people should be treated, not ignorant or narrow in thinking. A philosopher is a person who studies ideas about knowledge, truth, the nature and meaning of life. And then influential is having the power to cause changes. And here we come to our quote section. Growth is the only evidence of life. And that was said by Cardinal Newman. Thanks so much for joining me today. I know this was a little bit longer of a flip video lesson, but we did include our reading in it as well. Motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. Have a great day.